Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations Aloud, where we discuss geopolitics, economics, society, and culture. And today we're discussing what it means to embrace your pain and why it's needed to leverage freedom. Today we're joined by Misty Gilbert, who is a real estate investor, business consultant, transformational coach, author, speaker, and has a great TEDx talk on what it means the to be authentic. And it's called the art of authenticity. Welcome, Misty, to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here with you.
Great to have you. So, Misty, just to walk us through the journey that you've been through, what has your experience with pain been at the height of it?
Well, I would say a couple areas. I'm 47 years old and have had some physical issues since childhood that have impacted my life. Some things not very significant, like just allergies and various things, but I've also had diseases and sickness that have plagued me, and doctors have had issues trying to resolve, which led to my most recent battle with Lyme disease and mild toxicity illness. I've been in that journey for the last 4.5 years. As a child, I had chronic ear infections, tonsillitis, and an endometriosis, and had a complete hysterectomy at age 35 because I'd had surgery several times and they couldn't resolve the disease. So I'm not able to be a birth mother. Um, on a mental and emotional level, I was raised in a very abusive environment, which was very painful, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I was also a part of a cult for 37 years of my life, where women were suppressed and not given a voice and um, made to be in submission to men, and men were ruling over them. So there's been a lot of different areas of my life where I've had pain. On top of when I was 17, I was raped by a man 28 years older than me. So pain for me has been a journey of discovery and understanding that it is a signal for the body to alert yourself that something needs attention, needs more nourishment, it needs more care. Unless you want it to keep going that direction, then you're going to face further consequence.
Wow, that's a lot of things happening in a short period of time, and thanks for sharing that with us. Well, when someone kind of goes through so many episodes of pain, emotional, physical, mental, how does one kind of have a different relationship with it? Because it feels like when you're going through in those moments, and it's painful to have that experience, whatever that experience is. How do you change that relationship and that experience to kind of let go or to have a different experience when such events happen?
Well, I think my first introduction to understanding pain from a different perspective began um, in when I was 13. And I was very sick, and my mother said I needed to plan my memorial. So, planning my memorial would mean, who would carry my casket, who would sing at my service, what music would be played or sung, um, who would I want people to say things, flowers I would like, things like that. And this sounds very gruesome to most people. That wasn't a strange question for me to have in my childhood and the type of environment I was raised in. So I understand most people look at me like shocked, like your mother asked you that of you. But she had me
Yeah.
read a book called Pain is a Gift by Philip Yancey. And I think there's a second author to it. It's a very gruesome book that goes through the signals of the body and their reception to pain, particularly like when you touch a hot stove. That signal to your finger is so that you'll remove your finger and you don't get further burns. The book also talks about people who had leprosy and what they go through to physically get better and how they're ostracized by society. So understanding that pain was a gift was a new concept to me. Um, Instead of how most of us we get sick, the first words out of our mouth are, "I don't have time for this," or "Why is this happening right now?" Or and that negative energy only subdues the body more, and it forces you to resist it instead of embrace it. So to me, the catalyst to begin a transition through pain is not why is this happening, but what is the message it has for me, and what is it trying to
Mm.
alert me and draw me to move me somewhere else so I'll take action.
Yeah, and I love that because the first thing someone thinks about when they're having pain is why is that, as you said, why does that happen to me? You're trying to resist it. but you're saying embracing it. And for a lot of people, that's a difficult concept to have. How do you embrace pain, especially when it's painful? You know.
Well, I think there's two sides to that. There's learning how to have the balance to be able to push through the pain. So I have pain, but I can still function. I can still do this. I can still achieve things. And there's other times of being aware, like, oh no, this pain is at such a level, I need to stop. I need to take a break. I need to rest. And to keep pushing is trying to make your body do more than it has capacity to. It's easy for us to use analogies like you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help someone else. These scenarios get used so much, people don't relate to them anymore. So let's talk about if I were to come up on a scene and you're in immense pain, let's say you're having a panic attack or a gallbladder attack or something like that, how would I treat you? I wouldn't be resisting the fact you're in pain. I'm embracing the fact you're hurting and I want to comfort you. I want to see what I can do to help make that better. Do I need to move you to a different place to lay flat? Do you need some medicine? Do you need some water? Do you need a tissue? Like you start trying to solve the problem, but you don't fight it. You're accepting there's pain. You know that's there. Now, what's the next thing beyond that? Personally, though, when you're in it, again, I think it goes to how you were raised. I was raised very hard driving. So the thing for me was not to complain about pain, not to even really mention it, but to push through and to keep going and white knuckle it. And there's good to that. But when you do it to a point of abuse, which is what I did, you actually make your health issues worse. So, like right now with Lyme disease, when I have a bad day and I have these shock sensations that go up and down my spine, they're really not painful, but they're alarming and they can be happening and they make you jittery and anxious. There's times it gets so much like my nervous system just has so much overwhelm, I can't function. I start to shut down,
Mm.
start to lose my ability to speak, find my words, have brain fog. And so I tell myself, I joke, it's time to turn myself into a 2-year-old and take myself to bed and take a nap. And like if I can do a 20-minute meditation or 20 minutes of just laying still and resting, whether I put a mask over my eyes to completely decompress or listen to chill music or whatever, I have a weighted blanket that I'll crawl under that just makes me feel safe and like I'm being held and protected. So, learning what brings comfort to your body and when you need to push through or when you need to like decompress and breathe through it and do some stretches and drink some water and ground, do some grounding exercises or yoga stretches or things to release the tension. When you injure a muscle initially, like say you sprain an ankle or whatever, initially that's so painful, it hurts to move much of anything, right? And you're being very tender with it. But as you start strengthening it, as the week goes on, you actually start forcing it to stretch it past what feels good so that it'll get more limber, right? If you don't do that,
Mm.
you don't stretch past the pain, you actually make your ankle freeze up and it's not going to heal and it's going to have more scar tissue. So again, at the same flip of the coin, if you put too much pressure on that foot and you're trying to walk and go up a hill and climb mountains that you don't have the ability and shouldn't be doing it because it's not strong enough, you can tear a ligament, you can do more damage to your body. So same thing I feel mentally and emotionally. There's times where you can go, look, I can deal with this later. I can cry later. I got to get through this moment. And there's other times you need to stop right now and you need to have that cry. And so I think it's being able to decipher that war that's going on inside of you and why are you fighting it or why are you resisting it or why are you pulling back from it or what would make you pull it close? How can you show it love and acceptance?
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. And I think so. So what you're saying is it's kind of a combination of one, listening to the signal that your body's giving you, and instead of just ignoring it, which is a lot of times what we do because we just want to move forward, but also kind of accepting it not as a thing that this is the way it is and that's how it is and I can't do anything about it, but accepting it in terms of this is the situation right now and how can I move forward with that situation. I always feel like sometimes, there's the pain itself, and then on top of that, we add a bit of a different pain of how we're thinking of the pain itself. And that's not to take away from the pain, the experience that we're having, but it's always kind of like this another level that we tend to add by asking, why is this happening? It's kind of like digging a hole for ourselves, a bigger hole than we already are. But to your point, we can just kind of accept that and find a way to move forward. And that will probably help us move to a better place with better solutions, better options, for all the different angles for us.
Yeah, I think culturally we train people not to embrace pain. So it starts from a young age. You skin your knee riding a bike when you fall, and a parent goes, "Oh, it's not that bad. Just get back up, get on your bike." So some of these dismissive things, and you may learn that if you start crying, you'll get spanked more, or you'll get told and belittled, stop acting like a little kid, be a big boy, be a big girl. Things like this that we're told as children helps reinforce I can't let people know I have pain. If I let them know I have pain, then they're not going to love me. They're not going to accept me. They're going to make me bad, wrong, whatever. And I think those messages are so subtle we don't realize it. And so then we learn this pattern. We learn that if we express we have pain, we're told, oh well, there's always a silver lining, or we all have bad days. Like there's really not that embracing that I'm so sorry you're having a hard day. Let me give you a
Mm.
hug, right? Instead of trying to fix everybody and turn everything into life will be better when I get past this. And that's what most challenges and problems and painful experiences, what people are trying to do. They don't want to deal with this. They don't want to face this. They want to get past it onto the other side. So let me just, knuckle through it and this will be over in no time. And then I'll be back to my normal life. Instead of realizing pain is part of life. And if you allow it to be an ebb and flow like ocean, water in, water out, waves in, waves out, these kinds of experiences, just like the weather. Some days are sunny, some days it's rainy. A rainy day doesn't have to be a bad experience, but we typically been, oh my God, it's raining today. Like that's bad, right? Or, and I get rain can affect our mood and wake us want to curl up in bed with a book and a cup of tea versus go out for a run in the sun. I get energetically it can do things to us, but we decipher that meaning. So back to what you were saying is what's the story we're running in our head when we have pain?
Yeah,
And
totally agree.
are we trying to create a different story or embrace the story as this is my current reality, but this doesn't define me and it doesn't become my identity? Just like, you know, I don't say I am a rape victim. I tell people I was raped. It was a painful experience. It's something that happened. I don't deny it, but I don't keep my identity attached to being raped. Same thing with Lyme disease. I am currently dealing with Lyme disease. I don't say I have it. There's power. I don't want it. I don't want to keep it. By saying I have Lyme disease, I'm still holding on to it. I'm still owning it. I don't own it. I don't need to own it. It's experience I'm going through, but I can release it and let it go. And again, the power in my words, the choice of my words are going to define my experience.
100%. When did you realize you have that power? Because a lot of times, I totally resonate with the words that we choose, because events happen and suddenly we attach, automatically we attach ourselves to those events and to the meaning we've given to those events, not realizing we have power in what meaning we give to these events. When was that moment where you realized I have that power?
I think it was a combination of things. I mean, it started at age 20 when I left my parents' home. And when I told them that I was leaving, they told me I was never welcome back. And I chose in that instance to not believe my mother, who said I would die in 2 years. I chose to believe I would have 2 years of a wonderful life, even if at the end of it I died. And so, little things that eventually I realized the deck of
Mm.
cards I was given, I might not like this card, but this is mine to play. God gave it to me. It's mine to play. I get to choose how I play it. It's just like a soccer game, a football game. I get to decide how I show up. And the energy I put into everyday life is going to determine my experiences. Obviously, I've learned more over the years about mind body connection and um, the bioenergetics of our biopsychosocial makeup and how the body keeps the score. So it's not a total just, oh, flip the switch in your mind and then what words you choose to say and your problem's going to be solved. You're not going to have pain. But by incorporating all of that into my body and my mind and my soul and my spirit, I can have a different experience. So I'm not sure I can tell you one exact situation, but I know it's been a cumulative. Plus, I've worked with coaches to help get me past places where I was stuck and not able to see beyond my current paradigm or perspective into something different. And I'm a big fan of continual learning, whether it's Dr. Joe Dispenza or Wim Hof and his breath work, or there's numerous people, yoga, there's all kinds of modalities. And I believe all of them incorporated together kind of have that hand in glove experience. It takes both, right? You can't play baseball just with your hand or just with the glove. It takes both.
Yeah, and it's so important to reach out for help. Sometimes when these events happen, where it's kind of like we're in a tube, and it's very hard to see what's outside this tube because we're kind of so drawn into this experience. And one of the great things about coaching, and other similar things, is it allows us to see another perspective. And sometimes it's only that one small different perspective opens the door for something completely new, where, as you said, how we show up. And I guess it all comes down to how we're showing up to the moment, and that's what we have most of our agencies in that, right? It's how we're showing up to each moment, and the more agency we have with just that part can change a lot. Maybe not in terms of painful things that might happen, but how we experience that, as you kind of mentioned.
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts I'll share with you on that. I was raised very religious in a cult, so a lot of biblical, Bible based concepts. Um, and one of them that I've always liked was, as water reflects one's face, so one's life reflects their heart. And so, in other words, what is being shown outward, what you see in the mirror, you see in the water, is a reflection of what's going on internally. What most people
Mm,
spend time doing with pain is looking out here. Who caused it? Who made the problem? Blaming,
yeah.
pointing fingers, instead of looking inward. What am I thinking? What am I doing? What am I saying? How am I acting? What am I feeling? All these things, all these sensations create my experience. And so we can have our eyes looked outward all the time, but if we look back at ourselves, we're liable to see things from a different perspective. And looking at nature, roughly 12 hours of the day it's sunny and 12 hours of the day it's dark. What do you see in the day? What do you see at night? It's the same world, a different experience. So sometimes looking at, okay, is my world really dying because I'm in pain? Or is this pain just added stress or added frustration or added financial burden? Um, and a belief inside that it will pass. Like, just like the weather, if we have a thunderstorm or hurricane or a tornado, eventually this will pass. It might be a long window of hell, but it will pass. This will not be my life forever. And if it's a longer period of my life, what's my choice to be happy in these circumstances instead of waiting for life to happen and become amazing once you're on the other side of it? And again, that's a daily discipline. It's like, to me, like exercise and working out and eating healthy and drinking good water and getting good sleep.
Mm.
These things are something you look at every day. And the outside influences do affect us. What you say to me, how you treat me, how your emotion and energy is around me, whether you're accepting of me, as I say in my TED talk. Every relationship we go into, we're looking, how do you receive me? And also, how do you perceive me? Those are two different perspectives. So, are you receiving me? And then, as I'm sharing who I am, what is the perception you're getting about me? Okay. I can't change your perception about me necessarily, but I can influence it, I can impact it. And so, not getting caught up on one side or the other, but being, versatile through the whole process of analyzing your thoughts, your feelings, your habits, your patterns, your beliefs. These things all make up your experience.
You mentioned there kind of the pointing of the finger on what's outside. uh, it's very easy for us, and it makes a lot of sense to point that finger, especially when something is happening by someone onto us. How do you? I guess some people will say, you know, it was done to me by someone else, and I should be angry at that person instead of looking inside. Um, how do you kind of have that conversation around that piece?
Well, having been raised in a home where my mom was very abusive, she burned my brother's feet with matches 3 different times. And then having been raped, where somebody did something to me that I didn't want. Um, those experiences do create anger. And I don't think you shouldn't have anger over something that is um, not kind, but evil, destructive, hurtful. But it's okay. Now let that anger do something in me to fulfill my life forward and move it forward, not to be holding on to resentment um, and angst at somebody. Yes, it's something that happened that I wouldn't have chosen, but how can I let this bring forth good in my life? Tony Robbins says life is happening for your good, not to you. Um, the Bible says that all things work for your good. That doesn't mean they feel good. And I think that's the difference. People sometimes don't relate to is just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it's not going to bring about good. So we
Mm.
don't like forest fires, but they're necessary for the production and growth of certain trees, for them to drop seeds and plant more. Um, these things have to happen in nature for a cleaning out and for a rebirth. And so I think that if we can see pain as a cycle, that's actually going to be part of, as a snake sheds its skin, that's not got to be a real fun experience. They actually will put their head between two rocks to try to get the skin off their head. And once it's off their head, it slithers a lot more off the body. So I think of the same way as our bodies are going through its own process of healing and design of how we take in food and eliminate waste. It's taking out what's out of the body. And there's certain things that are going to be more painful through that process. But if something gets backed up, that's just a message. You've got an issue, you've got a backlog, and do what you can to bring about help. I don't think it's meant to destroy us, but I think that's, again, we're not taught as children to see pain as not a catastrophe.
Yes, yes, and you know, also, I think these things that we label as negative, and they say they are very. I think you can very you can comfortably say they are negative, and there's good support for that. But sometimes they allow us to experience the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, when you're ill, it's very hard to appreciate health without experiencing illness, and the pain associated with that. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if we're just healthy 100% of the time, all the time, we don't understand that because it's a constant for us.
Yeah.
And so even though sometimes falling ill and being sick is a horrible experience, it kind of allows us to understand and experience the opposite of that. Now, when it seems like you've gone through obviously a lot of difficult experiences, especially during your younger years. What is your relationship with those events now? Do you see them as you've been dealt a bad set of cards and you've had to kind of survive? Do you see them as just an event and an event that happened, and there was good and there was bad from it? How do you have that relationship with those events?
I feel a lot of them were very difficult experiences, and I don't have, I would say, a ton of fond memories of my childhood. But at the same time, I'm appreciative of things that I got from my childhood, even maybe if the living experience wasn't ideal or something that I would want to repeat. My parents taught me a lot of good skills about making money and how to make bread, sew clothes. I can do anything with my hands. I'm not afraid to start a business. I've started three. There's a lot of things like that. Those are great skills that my parents gave me. The things that I don't feel like got as good skills, like great communication and connecting with others, those are things that have driven me to become better because I didn't like the lack of skills that I had. And as I moved forward in life and didn't like how I responded, those are the things I started to look at. Okay, why am I so resisting to this pain? What can I do and what's in my power to change? Because expecting everybody else to chip in and change you or be there for you to be your support is asking a lot of other people. And ultimately, I'm the creator of my life and I get to choose, whether I want a life of peace or frustration and stress. I get to choose. Even in the pain, can I learn to say, I would love to answer those questions. I'm under the weather today and it just making me feel a lot more pressure. And I apologize. Can you give me a day to get back to you? Like, and then let that be. Let that person take it and make their own story about me and whatever. And they're frustrated instead of turning that into, I'm a bad person. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm weak. You can make it mean anything, or you can choose to see it and embrace it from a different perspective. And I try. I'm not perfect. I have my own struggles where I wake up and have really bad pain days, and I'm just like, I don't want to have to deal with this today. But realizing I'm not promised tomorrow anyway. So what's the best thing I can do today to make today better for me? How can I nourish my mind, my body, my soul, my spirit to get through this painful chapter? So I don't see
Yeah.
my circumstances as necessarily I was raised in a religious concept where these kinds of things were thought of, that God was punishing you. And I would say that was the hardest thing to overcome, is that I'm not being attacked by the devil and God is not punishing me. This is part of life. The tree of life that God created has good and evil, and that is life. Life is
Mm.
everything between the beginning and the end, and it takes breath. And without breath, you have no life. So, what am I giving breath to, energy to, focus to, vision to, purpose to, and sit with those things that are in my control.
Yeah, talk about taking authority and responsibility and agency. Now, you mentioned there's something about God, which I think, speaking to a lot of people that come from religious backgrounds, I hear this actually, which is the feeling of like I did something wrong and I'm being punished, um, which growing up with that kind of thinking will cause a lot of problems. And the first thing that comes to my mind, because I've had those similar experiences, it's kind of the feeling of uh, feeling guilty, that I've done something wrong, feeling like shame. Um, how do you how do you manage to kind of work with those emotions, and kind of move forward?
Well, I do it differently than I used to. I'm not opposed to now getting angry at God and yelling at him. I'm not opposed to telling him this, you know, really hurts. It's really painful. It sucks. I don't like it. I need help. Letting that emotion out instead of stuffing it, and instead of automatically going that God's against me. Believing deep down that God is still for me, even though I'm in a painful chapter, painful season, painful experience. And the more that I would inflict pain on you, so why do I want to believe God's inflicting pain on me? Like, I really embrace that energy though and let it out instead of holding it in, whether it's a journal, whether it's tears, whether it's prayer and meditation and having a conversation to God. I do. I don't run from being dark about it. If I need to be dark about it, I be dark about it. And I be honest when people
Mm.
ask me, Misty, how are you doing today? Today's a really hard day. I'm physically hurting really bad. Thanks for asking. It doesn't mean I want to talk 50 minutes about my pain, but I'm
How, how,
honest. I'm transparent.
how do people react to that? Because a lot of
Usually
times,
shocked. To be honest with
yeah.
you, that they many times don't know how to, stumble. I'm sorry. Or then they get, like I said at the beginning, we're taught to be, oh, well, you'll get through today. You're strong. God's got you. All these little cliche statements, which really are dismissive. If somebody just reached out and pulled me close and gave me a hug, or just said, thanks for sharing, I'm sorry you're having a hard day, like that would make me feel like $1 million, right? Like, I'm already struggling to get through it. But again, I can show up and go, it's a horrible day and I'm in pain. Oh, and take my frustration and stress out on everybody around me who's not going to want to be around me because not only am I in pain, but I'm reactive. Or I can say, you know what, like, I'm sure it's really hard to understand Lyme disease. And you saw me 2 days ago and I looked really healthy and good. And today, like, I'm pale and I can't lift anything and I'm hardly can talk. And, like, I'm sure it's hard to understand. I get it. It's just one of those dynamics. It's just a hard day for me. And just if you can be kind, that'd be wonderful. I just try to help them help
Mm.
me instead of, you know, if you had Lyme disease, you'd know how hard it is. Like that just doesn't do anything to the relationship. But that's how most people get. I'm in pain. Can't you see I'm in pain? Well, no. Even if your
Yeah.
face is showing a painful thing, not everybody's going to relate that facial expression to mean that you have pain. So I find the more vulnerable and transparent you are from the get go when you talk to people about any topic, you get a better, deeper, stronger connection. And that's part of, I think, why we're given pain, is so that we can love deeper and we can connect deeper.
Yeah, can you open that up a bit when you
Yeah.
say pain helps us kind of connect deeper? And just before that, you mentioned there, understanding the other perspective of maybe they don't understand what I'm going through, and kind of being aware of that. That sounds, that's something you have to have a lot of compassion, and awareness to reflect about what someone else is thinking and what they're missing from the picture whilst you are in pain, right? And I guess the more you connect with people, the more you can experience and build that compassion, right? So how has pain helped you kind of connect to more people and build that compassion piece?
Well, I've had to start with myself. be more kind and compassionate to myself because I have high
Mm,
expectations. I don't like where I'm at in life, if you will, truthfully, and how this disease has wreaked havoc on my life. Um, and there's been other complications. A year and a half ago, I was involved in a massive car wreck where somebody pulled out in front of me, and my Corvette was totaled. And I'm lucky to be alive. I went 5 months not being able to work, on top of what I was already dealing with. I can get more
yeah.
angry that I'm not able to make the money I'd made before, and all these kinds of things. And I had speaking gigs last year that I had to cancel. Like the domino effect of that was huge. But did the person intentionally, totally drive out in front of me to wreak havoc on my life? No. No. Did they not look like they should have? Yes. Did they make a big mistake that cost a lot? Yes. But realistically, I can be grateful that my Corvette saved my life. The long ass front end protected me, and I T-boned them, but my life was saved, right? So having that compassion first with myself that I am in pain and that life isn't as I planned, as we always say, and then realizing that people aren't in my body. They can't feel my pain level. That's why when you go to a doctor, they go, okay, today, can you tell me your pain levels at 1 to 10? They're trying to gauge. They can't tell that. They can't put you through a machine that says, oh, yeah, their pain's this. Our pain is different. And how we were taught to respond to pain and how we continue to train our bodies to respond to pain. Is this a life and death matter, or is this an inconvenience? That's going to also, play into how you treat your body. And what today can I do that's going to treat my body with kindness and compassion? If I'm forcing myself to go, 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 push, 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 get on that call, be a superwoman, you, then that's the energy that's going to come out to the people around me. And so, do you think they're going to relate to my pain if I'm pushing through and acting like it doesn't exist when my body's screaming like mad? No. So, the more that I can open up and let them know, look, like, I know it looks like I'm strong and I'm healthy, but today I'm struggling physically. My pain's at a level 8. I'm just letting you know. So, if I say something short, like it's not meant to be intentional or mean, I'm just really hurting. I just feel like
Mm,
it allows people, you give people the key to be compassionate and loving to you versus they're trying to communicate to you. They don't have that information. It's kind of like, as a homeowner, there's something wrong in the house. You don't have the same information an electrician has about the wires not connecting, and that's creating the problem. You're giving them a piece of information that's going to help them help you. So I look at it like that. um,
mm,
and there are a lot of people that can't handle their own pain. They're not going to be able to handle yours. So learning that their response to me isn't necessarily about me, it's about them. And don't take it personal. Doesn't mean I won't, but try not to, because that's their own inability to handle pain or their conception that they think taking a Advil or Tylenol is going to solve it.
yeah. Yeah, no, totally agree. Do you find sometimes that when you become vulnerable and discuss these things, you see a different side to people?
Yes, many times. Many times my vulnerability gives them a gateway to be vulnerable in ways they never thought they could. I can't tell you how many people I work with that'll say, I'm sharing things with you I've never shared with anybody, even my husband or my wife, because they have that much fear and they have not felt safe to express what's on their heart and their mind and in their thoughts and their feelings. And giving them that space to be seen, heard, valued, appreciated, understood, loved, respected is is the beginning of a connection. Having that curiosity and not a criticism or judgment from the get go is it's a requirement to really, really connect, I believe. And I believe that's one reason there's so much disconnection in relationships. And I believe it's one reason why we get a lot out of social media, because we can show a part of us and keep a part back. But we still never really feel connected because we're not being fully transparent and we're not being fully vulnerable. And to write that way and show up that way, regardless of your critics, takes in depth courage. I'm very courageous. I still don't like people who attack me, no matter how vulnerable I am. That still doesn't feel good. But I have to know they're coming from their own perspective and pain, and they're only going to entertain a certain amount. And it's my job to communicate in a way that guides them past that, whether it's to connect to me or to connect to themselves or to connect to somebody else. But that transparency, to be open, real, raw, and vulnerable is my definition of authenticity. I don't believe you can be authentic without those four components.
Yeah. And, someone might say, why? Why should I be? Why should I put myself out there like this? It's dangerous. It's scary. I don't see what I'm gaining by doing that. Uh, how would you kind of respond to that?
I always go back to like, what is, well, first of all, what is your driving purpose and need in life, right? We all desire connections. And even people that say, no, I like being alone, I don't need people. That's not true. They do. They may not need as many people, or they may not need as big of a circle. I think we all have different needs, and I believe we go through seasons of life where we have a greater need for this or that. I think the years of being isolated and alone as a child have driven me to figure out how to be connected to people, because I didn't like that feeling of aloneness. Um, and again, that feeling of aloneness at times can be our own inner thoughts and feelings and not necessarily be our reality, but learning how to live in your reality, but not make your reality your identity in any circumstance. I think whether that's pain or aloneness or whatever you're going through in life is the key to transitioning and um, being able to be transparent. One, you can't deny and lie to yourself and be honest with the world. It's a contradiction. So if you're lying and being dishonest to yourself, you're not going to be truthful to the world in what you share because you can't do it with yourself. And so I think starting with yourself and realizing the true paradigm you're living in, and that fear is because we've had experiences in our childhood that tell us if we're vulnerable and we share these things, we won't get the job. If we don't have a credit score or a marital status or so many kids, we're not going to be promoted. These are things we're taught, and in certain circles, they're true, but that doesn't have to be my identity. I'm 47, single, never been married. A lot of the people I coach are men. A lot of people would assume they're women. A lot of them are men that are trying to look for a way to how to stand up in their marriage that's a sexless marriage, or in a marriage where their wife won't communicate. Or there's a lot of ways that we aren't transparent. We may show all the good photos of the couple on social media and happy 25th wedding anniversary, but behind the scenes, they're fighting all the time and they don't love each other. And so again, I wanted a life of full transparency. I didn't want the life that I had as a child where my parents went to church and we looked good, but behind the scenes, it was a shit show. So these are the kind of things that drove me to find, how do I be true to myself? How do I love and have compassion for my life and my circumstances and not make my circumstances other people's problems? That phrase that's out there, to basically heal your wounds or you'll bleed on everybody else. I don't remember the exact quote, but I'm sure you've heard it. Um,
Yeah.
you know, my traumas, my pain would bleed on everybody else because I didn't know how to handle my own trauma and pain. So learning how to be okay with my bruises and my wounds and my hurts, and that there are some people who are going to look at me as disabled because that's how they look at society. I mean, we praise military who go and serve our country and then they're wounded, but then when they come home, they're labeled disabled, like extreme PTSD, can't work, whatever. They're just as loving and valuable as they were before they went in the army, the military, the navy, whatever. These are still lovable people, valuable people, but somehow we move them over. They can't do what they used to do, and we segregate them instead of seeing them as a whole that's still necessary and vital. I would say that's one perspective. My second perspective is I wasn't raised watching TV, but have seen and learned a little bit through Mr. Rogers' documentary of his life. And I have a part and a purpose at a core to be a female version of Mr. Rogers, to love people, because I feel that love and that connection is why we have the world we have now. And I feel it can change, and I want to be a ripple effect. And I feel the risk to do that means I have to stand up and be a Rosa Parks and do what feels uncomfortable to lead people to a better life and better, deeper relationships and more understanding of love and pain and how it can coexist. And it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Mm. Yeah, powerful, and it just shows you how much pain is needed sometimes to go to the next level and to experience something else, and to leverage in a way that allows us to see something that we wouldn't be able to see without that challenge. Um, so when you think about, having freedom, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom for me is a really deep core value, because I feel I was living in a prison physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not just in my childhood, but the religious cult I was raised in. On my 40th birthday, my first tattoo that I got on my foot says live intentionally in freedom. Living intentionally is a purpose of mine. Living intentionally in freedom is a deeper purpose of mine, because I don't believe we're here to live in bondage and change of fear, shame, guilt, regret. And that's typically the paradigm most people are living in. They're running away from their pain, they're running away from their catastrophes because of fear, shame, guilt, and regret. I believe that to transition out of that, it comes from the love and acceptance we have for ourselves and for others, no matter what they've been through. We have to. So freedom to me is realizing what is life costing me to stay in these chains and this paradigm that I have in perspective. What is it costing? What freedom is it costing me?
Mm. And how do you kind of, I guess, on on a daily basis, how do you kind of know whether you lived intentionally, and connected to your value of freedom?
Well, I think you're always evaluating that, right? Because you might think you're on the right track and being intentional, and then you might show up and have a situation where you can clearly see, like, I'm boxed in. And that feeling of no way out, no choice, is a process of working through in your heart and mind. Like, what are the pros of this situation? What are the cons? What can I fix? What can I not fix? Kind of an analysis and evaluation of what am I saying about my life versus how am I living? Where's the congruence? Where's the disconnect? Because
Mm.
usually, if you're living intentionally, you're gonna those results, that fruit is going to become evident. It might take some time, but that fruit is going to show. So if you're not getting the results you want, go enter and look at, what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What are my habits? What are my beliefs? And where are those things impacting my intentionality? What might I be blind to that someone else can see, where I'm living in bondage and I'm not choosing freedom?
When you
And
say living in bondage, what do you mean by that?
well, people pleasing is a form of bondage. Not being authentic is a form of bondage. Not being vulnerable is a form of bondage. These are things people do thinking they don't have a choice. They can't, if I do this, the risk, the cost is going to cost me my friendships, my job. Instead of realizing the courage it takes to stand up for truth sometimes is a risk. But the freedom that comes from doing so is a reward on the other side. Yeah, sometimes that means you lose your job because you were the whistleblower. Sometimes that means there's financial ramifications from that choice that you made. I'm not saying there aren't consequences to the decisions. What I'm saying is, what's the deepest outcome you're trying to create, and where you're at now. If you stay here, is it going to lead you to freedom or further backwards into a box that you're going to be felt and treated as being small?
Mm. And that's the thing. Sometimes, even though the place you're in is difficult and painful, it's hard to move away from that, because sometimes at least we know what that is, as opposed to the thing that, if we change things, if we take that next step, that courage, overcome the challenge, it takes us to a place where I don't know what's going to happen there. But at least I know this place right here, and this, even though it's painful, there's a type of comfort to it.
Yes.
um, it's just that knowingness of it will be the same, at
I think
least.
there's a comfort, and I think there's a security and safety, and that's where you've got to explore. A lot of people like to move to anything, you have to get outside your comfort zone. I think sometimes it starts by being willing just to go through the space you just described of unknown and uncertainty. And that's why a reason I think a lot of people fight pain, because it's an unknown. Where is it coming from? What is its source? How do I find it? How much time is it going to take? How much money is it going to take? Is there a deeper issue? Do I have cancer? And they get so scared, right? The pain goes to a level of extreme. Or they're expecting it to be benign and simple, and I don't have an issue. And then when they do have one, they can't accept it because their reality is different than what they were holding on to as a belief. So how do you hold a belief like I do that like Lyme disease, there's a cure, even though mainstream medical says there is no cure. You can go into remission, but not a cure. I don't choose to believe that. I believe the body is uniquely and wonderfully made, and I'm going to do everything I can to believe it can heal itself. So that does not mean I don't ignore my reality that I have this and my labs continue to show it, but then I'm going to do the work and believe that I'll eventually get there and it won't be there and then it's beyond just remission. We don't say when you get, bronchitis or tonsillitis and a sore throat that you get remission when it goes away. It's cured. So why are there some things that we say remission? Again, is it a play on words? Am I playing a game with myself? Maybe. But it's a choice that I've made because I believe it gives me that freedom to get healthy. Instead of
Mm.
being labeled what I call a black label, I have Lyme disease.
Yeah. So instead of being put in a box,
We're going to
you're
be put in a
choosing.
box. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's a challenge for most of us to sit in the unknown without answers and still have faith.
It sounds simple, but it's not. So I mean, just even sitting down and just being and not thinking is difficult because it's also an unknown. We're constantly just labeling and analyzing all those things. Just to kind of be at peace
Mm-hmm.
is there's a lot of uncertainty to that.
Well, and there's a lot of training that's done from a young age. Everything that receives accolades and praise and reward is for those things that you can prove, right? Good grades, so much money, the success. Like people don't praise people for going through pain. They don't do that. So those
Yeah.
aren't the things that we think are going to be beneficial to our lives. So we fight it. And instead of like every level we go through is another level to grow to. So like any experience you have of pain, once you are able to handle that, you're going to have more stuff come in your life to grow you to another level. And when you see it as a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity and a deepening and a curiosity instead of criticizing and judgmental and condemnation and fear, it's a whole different
Yeah.
experience.
100%. And that's the thing when we have just a specific model of what success looks like. Anytime we deviate from that, it's a big problem.
Yes.
Misty, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people reach you?
I'm on all social media platforms under Misty W. Gilbert. You can also reach me at mistywgilbert.com to connect and send me an email. I'm doing a give back coaching day next week on the 24th. If anybody wants to book a session for $24, this is just a commitment, and then the session's free. So we'd love to meet some more people and help them transform their perspective. My question to them today would be, what would you do if you weren't afraid?
Love it. An important question. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and your experience and for having this conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.